Dusty, have you ever gone on a hunting trip?
Well, yeah.
You pack all your stuff. Let's say you're driving to New Hampshire. Let's say I'm driving to Ohio, and you're hunting for 4, 5, 6 days. What's the biggest challenge you usually have?
You're going to stop multiple times and get gas, and I worry about odor the whole way.
It's always in the back of your head. After talking to our friend Tim Gauthier, we realized that there's a better solution that is portable. And that solution is called the ScentLok Enforcer. This nifty little device, about the size of an iPhone, it produces ozone. Ozone is this naturally occurring O3 molecule that actually naturally removes odors, kills bacteria, binds to all kinds of odor particles in the air, and basically makes you scent-free instead of like a scent cover-up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
You can put this in your tote. It operates off of a USB and has an 8-hour battery life.
It's the personal ozone generator.
It is the personal ozone generator. If you want to check it out, go to ScentLokEnforcer.com. That's ScentLok Enforcer.com. Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast, episode number 166. Tim Gauthier, Swamp Buck Pinch Points, Hunting the Hunter, Ozone, and the ScentLok Enforcer. Please support our sponsors as they make this show possible. Today's show is sponsored by ScentLok Enforcer and Morse's Sporting Goods. Big Buck Registry is a virtual museum of hunting stories. We preserve a piece of Americana by interviewing and recording hunters about their hunts and experiences from across the country. And who knows, maybe we'll learn a thing or two along the way that'll help us take our hunt to the next level.
Hey guys, this is Dan Bass with Tune Archery, the timeman and inventor of the Hang On Helper. You're listening to my favorite show. It's about to be yours, Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast.
Hi everybody, I'm Michael Waddell with the Bone Collector TV show, and you're getting ready to listen to another episode of the Big Buck Registry Deer Hunting Podcast.
Hey everyone, this is Nikki Boxford from Winchester Life. Get ready to press play on my favorite podcast, Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast.
Welcome to another episode of the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. You know, I am absolutely 100% psyched that you are joining us once again as you push that play button on your audio device, whether it's your phone or your computer or whatever you're using to listen to the show. I am pumped that you're sitting right next to me right now, getting ready to talk deer hunting ad nauseum. As is my friend Dusty Phillips from Ohio, the co-host of the Big Buck Registry Deer Hunting Podcast, powered by USA Trail Cam's Dusty Phillips.
What's happening, Jay? Man, just happy to be here with everybody.
How's the deer woods looking?
I really can't tell you right this week, Jay. I haven't had time to get there.
You've been knee-deep in pumpkins.
That's crazy. Been a whole lot of stuff going on. Planting pumpkins, hay, and sports with the girls, and man, it's just been crazy.
It's like people want to have all the straw and pumpkins that they can muster before October hits, and you're the guy that supplies it to a lot of the people in your area.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, really. Just something that my girls thoroughly enjoy, and just as a hobby, and it's just crazy how it all unfolds, really.
Absolutely. You know, deer season, of course, is right around the corner. And as this show is playing, I am deer hunting in Maryland. And so, you know, the season has definitely kicked off. It kicked off in New Hampshire on Thursday, the 15th. So things are in full swing for bow season pretty much everywhere I can think of, for the most part. And as you heard in our ad about Ozone and the ScentLok Enforcer, we decided to go real deep about that this week and talk to Tim Gauthier, who's one of the guys behind the ScentLok Enforcer. And we don't just talk about the product itself. Yes, we talk about it a little bit, but really it's all about Tim's life. He's actually got over 50 years of hunting experience behind him. He's hunted all over the world. He's had a taxidermy shop. He's filmed all kinds of wildlife. And now he's getting into the retail side of things, with his ScentLok Enforcer. And actually, Tim and ScentLok Enforcer has agreed to come on as one of the sponsors of the show. So I'm pretty excited about that. But if you want to really get into it, Tim actually has a huge amount of knowledge in his head from his 50-plus years of hunting. We dig kind of deep and extract some of those tips and tricks that we always like to do on the show.
He is full of information on hunting in general, and he knows a thing or two about the ozone.
He certainly does. Let's turn to Tim in a moment, but before we do, let's turn to Jim Keller with the Deer News.
For the Big Buck Registry, this is Jim Keller with the Deer News. In our first story this week, 8th Michigan deer test positive for wasting disease. This story was originally featured in the Lansing State Journal and was written by Ken Palmer. State wildlife officials said an 8th deer in the Lansing, Michigan area has tested positive for chronic wasting disease. DNR deer specialist Chad Stewart said the most recent deer to test positive was shot about 2 weeks ago in the same area of Meridian Township where the first of several CWD positive deer were killed. The 3.5-year-old buck was killed by state-sanctioned sharpshooters in Meridian Township and is suspected to have the fatal neurological disease based on state tests. Samples have been sent to a U.S. Department of Agricultural laboratory in Iowa for confirmation. The state agency is also counting on hunters to submit the head of their deer for testing to help it better understand the scope of the outbreak. More than 6,000 deer have been tested for CWD since the first case was discovered in a free-ranging deer in Meridian Township in early 2015. 7 cases have been confirmed, and with all of those animals coming from Ingham and Clinton counties. State officials send positive test results to the Iowa lab for final confirmation. The DNR is encouraging hunters to participate in the CWD zone and will have 5 check stations open during the hunting season. For a link to this story, including a listing of townships in the CWD zone, as well as a map to the check stations, please check our show notes at www.bigbuckregistry.com. Bowhunter faces charges after fatally shooting his hunting partner by quote-unquote accident. This story was originally featured on the OutdoorHub.com website and was written by Keenan Crow. A man in Oregon is facing criminal charges for negligent homicide after police said he shot and killed his hunting partner with his bow. According to KPTV, Michael Sean Pekarik called 911 reporting that he had shot Jeffrey Cummings with an arrow while the two were supposedly bow hunting together. Investigators said the two men spotted mule deer from their vehicle when Pekarik got out to attempt a shot on the animal. Pekarik's plea is that he turned towards Cummings with his arrow ready to fire to let him know the deer was moving and shot Cummings in the abdomen. Michael Pekarik was later arrested and lodged at the Deschutes County Adult Jail on 1 count of criminal negligent homicide with a bail of $50,000. We're all gearing up for hunting season, so take this time to reiterate the importance of each of these 4 rules before heading out afield. Treat every weapon as if it's loaded. Never point your weapon at something you don't want to kill. Keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready to shoot. Always be sure of your target when you shoot. Why hunters should care about the Conservation Reserve Program, also known as CRP. This story was originally featured on the National Deer Alliance website. If you are just hearing about the Conservation Reserve Program for the first time, the best place to start is the U.S. Department of Agriculture, USDA, Farm Service Agency description. CRP pays a yearly rental payment in exchange for farmers removing environmentally sensitive land from the agricultural production and planting species that will improve environmental quality. CRP is a program within the Farm Bill, and it was first introduced in 1985. This once great program supported more than 37 million acres of soil and water conservation and associated wildlife habitat. Unfortunately, Congress reduced the program to 24 million acres in the current Farm Bill, which has led to USDA turning down thousands of CRP applications submitted by farmers across the country. This has resulted in a devastating loss of habitat for upland birds, waterfowl, freshwater fish, and deer. There are a number of reasons deer hunters should care about CRP. For instance, grasses and legumes are good food sources and serve as quality cover for adult deer while providing excellent fawning habitat as well. Tall grasses also provide security by allowing deer to better hide from predators like coyote, foxes, bears, and wolves. In addition, CRP practices create edge habitat, which is preferred by all deer species. We'll stay tuned to the National Deer Alliance website for further developments and how we can help to preserve the future of the Conservation Reserve Program. Man gets 60-plus tickets for dead deer. This story was originally featured on the WeAreCentralPA.com website as reported by Alex Belzer. In Jefferson County, Pennsylvania, 76-year-old Charles Bodorf says the Game Commission is overstepping its boundaries by searching for dead deer on his private property. However, the Game Commission says he didn't follow the rules for deer killed for crop damage. A semi-retired farmer, Bodorf, says he has to shoot deer to stop them from eating his crops, but now the Game Commission is trying to fine him. Bodorf blames deer and admits to killing deer. The commission filed more than 60 tickets that could cost Bodorf about $16,000 and even put him in prison. Bodorf was also ticketed in 2014 and said he intends to fight the charges. For links to these stories, please check our show notes at www.bigbuckregistry.com. That concludes this week's edition of the Big Buck Registry Deer News. If you have any ideas for future topics or have questions about any of these topics, please email me at jim@bigbuckregistry.com. For the Big Buck Registry, this is Jim Keller with the Deer News.
Thanks to Jim Keller for the Deer News. Without further ado, here's Tim Gauthier.
Tim Gauthier, welcome to the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. What's happening, my friend?
Not much, bud. How are you?
Living the dream, man. It's, deer season is right around the corner where I live. It started in other parts of the country. I was out shooting my bow today, and a giant Bruin boar walked down the trail right at me, and did not expect to see this massive beast of a bear, a black bear, walking down the trail right towards me as I'm target practicing my backyard. But the beasts are among us, and it's time to go harvest them, I guess is a good way to put it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Seems like after Labor Day, we all turn into kids again. When it comes time to go in and chase some whitetails, so I'm in the same boat. And to be able to go shoot your bow and watch a Bruin like that walk by and not harvesting it, you're just enjoying him in his natural environment. It's pretty awesome.
It was pretty awesome. Isn't it true, though? We get giddy. Like us old guys get giddy when deer season gets here.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we look forward all year round, and it's just a part of our culture and part of our lives that is huge. And I have a new perspective every time Labor Day is over with. I'm doing the same thing, checking trail cams, getting prepared, and getting ready for the fall.
Exactly. So it's a good time of year for all. And I guarantee anybody that's listening to the show is understanding exactly what we're talking about. Now, Tim, tell me about yourself. You're an interesting guy. We've talked about your past, and you've got a very interesting history relative to the outdoor world, from being a producer, a film producer, to creating some pretty cool products. And I want to cover it all tonight, or as much as we possibly can. But tell me about yourself. Where are you at right now? Where do you call home, and where did you grow up? And let's start there.
Okay, well, I'm in northern Michigan right now, along Lake Huron. This is where pretty much all my family resides now. And family is a huge part of my life, and that's how I got associated with hunting. I think I was 10 years old when my father started teaching me how to trap. It's always been a big part of our tradition, hunting is, in our family. Mm-hmm. My father had 17 brothers that all hunted. My grandfather before him fed his family on deer.
No kidding. Wow.
I have, yeah. It's, he had a lot of kids to feed, like 23, and he had a permit to where he could harvest. I think one year he took 23 deer way back when. We're talking back in the 30s and 40s.
Wow.
To where he could feed his family. But we've always been huge hunters, and we still carry the tradition, like a lot of states, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, New York, Pennsylvania, all have that opening day, go to the hunting camp tradition of hunting. And, our family is huge in it. And to this day, all our kids are hunters. My brothers, I have three brothers, all four of us boys are part of the hunting industry. One of my brothers has an archery business. Two of my brothers travel all around the world hunting, as well as been presidents of our Safari Club chapters. So our whole family is really involved with hunting, to the point when there's holidays, we all have our own little hunting shacks or bunkhouses where the guys go out and talk about hunting and the women are in cooking. So it's sort of been our heritage, and it's been 45 years I've been hunting, and we've continued it from then till now.
That's awesome.
It's pretty awesome.
So you grew up in a hunting tradition household, it sounds like. It's just been around you your whole life.
Correct.
That's awesome. Do you have any recollections or memories from your childhood that kind of set the tone for you making a career of this?
Oh boy. My father trained, he had a situation when he was younger of a hunting accident or a gun accident. And so we were really brought up strict. I mean, I was 12 years old. I could go push pheasants, but I couldn't have a gun. When I was 13, I got to carry a gun with nothing in it, just to learn how to handle a gun over fences and gun safety. At 14, I could bird hunt. 14, I was then turned into a driver or a dog for deer hunting. 15, I could hunt with a shotgun. And it wasn't until I was 16 that I could hunt with a rifle. And at that time, it was tough. I mean, I had friends hunting that were 12, 14, and I couldn't, and it just drove me crazy. But it just also instilled so much in me as far as the proper way to hunt and the ethical way and the safe way of hunting. And then I just, through trapping and everything, I decided at 12 that I wanted to be a taxidermist. So I actually took a correspondence school in the mail. I think it was Northwest School of Taxidermy, if I'm not mistaken, and just started learning to do taxidermy on my own. And in fact, it came to the point later in life where I was a taxidermist. I had a business for 15 years. So, but it was all about learning who my father really was and my uncles really were. They were away from work. You got to hunting camp. I really learned who they really were. There was no pressure from hunting or from work and away from the wives. And it was just an awesome time of my life. I'll never forget sitting in our hunting shack with, 4 bunks on each side and guys playing euchre and smoking and drinking beer and guns hanging all over the walls. And,
right.
I mean, that's sort of our memory. And we still do to this day. We still have a hunter roundup at my father's, who's 86, and hang all our bucks at his place. And it's been a tradition that hopefully we'll carry to our kids as well.
Oh, that's so cool! Just great memories. I'm just thinking about everything you just described. It sounds heavenly. It's just kind of one of those environments that we naturally find ourselves in. So tell me about your taxidermy career. How long did you do that?
About 14 years.
Okay.
I had a taxidermy business, and I loved doing it. And I sort of school taught, but more self-taught, and did a lot of work of photographing wildlife to make sure that they were all anatomically correct, and really enjoyed taxidermy. But what I didn't like is the fact that I couldn't hunt. I mean, I might have had 1 or 2 days of opening day, and then the rest of the time I had to be back because everybody was bringing the deer in. So I think it was 1990, and I took off to Alaska on a brown bear hunt and bought a little VHS camera. And I was sort of getting burnt out on taxidermy and just wanted to venture more. And I went to Alaska and started filming and came back home and said, I'm selling the taxidermy. This is what I want to do the rest of my life. So that was sort of my start of my filming career, and sort of did that for a long time.
Gotcha. And so let's talk about your filming career a little bit. When did you decide that you're going to turn to that? What was that defining moment?
It was pretty much on that trip.
Okay.
That's what I wanted to do. I just absolutely love being out there. I mean, I'm a huge hunter, and I've harvested a ton of animals in my life, but I also love wildlife. And I figured, if I can run a camera, I can hunt year round. And I mean, you have to be I could teach people when I trained them how to run a camera. I could teach anybody to run a camera, but I couldn't teach them how to hunt. That was something that you had to be instilled or had a passion for. And so, I think in 1993, I ended up investing everything I had and buying some camera gear. Learned a lot from a VHS to where you couldn't use anything but the audio. Right. To buying some 3/4-inch gear. And in 1993, I think I did my first turkey video, which I documented the turkey 365 days a year. And it was called World of the Wild Turkeys. So that was my first hunting video that I produced. Oh, wow. And I think, from that point forward, I think I ended up producing 13. Okay. Hunting videos. And that was in the early stages where videos were $50 a piece, and, Real Tree and Mossy Oak weren't even doing videos at that time. So it was pretty it was pretty cool.
Wow.
But,
So you were doing videos like those, the early years. This was the precursor to even some of the real tree stuff. Wow, that's intense.
Yeah. And I did, I think, 2 turkey. I did the Super Slam. I harvested all the turkeys of North America. Did a video on that. I think I did 3 whitetail, caribou, elk, 2 Africa, one with the Maasai warriors in Tanzania and one with the Pygmies in Cameroon, Africa. And I had a great experience traveling around the world filming wildlife. And I wasn't, majority of the time I wasn't hunting.
Right.
Most of the time I was filming.
Right. So, what's the trickiest part about filming wildlife that you found after all that experience?
Patience.
Okay.
Patience, big time. I mean, it takes a lot, and not, understanding the animals, understanding their habits and their characteristics, and without carrying a gun and walking at daybreak through a stream in British Columbia with coastal brown bears running all over the place. You had to understand their habits, or people would think you're nuts. But I think that's the number one thing is patience and understanding what you're filming in the species. So
gotcha, and that would relate to hunting as well.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's sort of where, from that point, that's where I then picked up a TV show. I had produced a couple productions, Destination Wildlife, where I wanted to show the relationship between man and wildlife and how they survive together. Mm-hmm. And then I picked up a gig because I had filmed so much and so many different species that for 4 years, I was a co-producer of the Loophole Big Game Profiles presented by the Boone and Crockett Club. And that was a series where we documented each of the big game species of North America. Yep. And we did conservation, documentary, as well as hunting to show all that all worked. And the biggest thing is preparation, understanding your quarry, understanding your limits, and, carrying 80 pounds of camera gear on your back was about the...
Right. Yeah.
Nowadays it's, people can't carry 5 pounds, but I used to carry about 80 pounds when I did sheep hunts and goat hunts. And
that's intense.
Yeah, it's changed a lot.
So you must have learned a lot about just wildlife in general. I mean, you said patience was important, but you must have learned a lot of other things. You must have had a lot of techniques that you picked up along the way, things that made you better at what you were doing, whether it be hunting or filming. And I'm curious, and I'd like to turn the mic over to Dusty here for a little bit and kind of pick your brain about a lot of those details and techniques and strategies that you've employed, specifically relative to whitetail hunting, because that's what we like to talk about here, or even just deer hunting anywhere, whether it's anywhere in the world.
When you go out, do you carry a backpack with you by chance, Tim?
Yes, sir.
Can you open the zipper up and tell us what you pack in there?
Well, my digital beta cams, my last big cameras, they were about 27 pounds. Plus I had 3 battery packs, which were another 15. I got all your mics, all your cables, everything you need to make sure that you're prepared. I mean, the one thing if you go out filming and you have one thing missing, you miss a whole day. And so there was, lens cleaners to, calls to whatever. I mean, I fit it in there. And then, of course, I had a 25-pound tripod that I humped because you had to have a heavier tripod in order to handle the heavier cameras. And I guess one of my biggest things was I was a fanatic on steady, of making sure that when I'm zooming in at 400 yards that I try to give a clear, nice, calm, steady pan or not too shaky. Nowadays with YouTube, people don't really care. But back then, when you were getting into documentaries and trying to tell a story, I feel that I probably spent more time trying to keep my shot steady and quality of my shots, which, again, takes a lot more effort and a lot more, back power to get up those mounts. I think I did 17 sheep hunt and goat hunts in my life with camera gear.
Wow. So
that was a lot of humping.
Yeah, for sure. No doubt about it. You say that stuff weighed in at around 80 pounds on your back, huh?
By the time I had everything, it was pretty close to 80 pounds.
Yeah, things have come a long way, ain't they?
Yeah. I remember a young guy, cameramen I had, I picked up some JVCs over the shoulder, and they weighed about 12 pounds. And he was whining the whole time that he had to carry so much weight, and it was just funny. And then I got a picture of him hauling an email from him there. He had about 200 pounds elk sheds on his back in Montana, and I thought that was pretty crazy that he was whining about a 12-pound camera. But, you know, you had to do what you had to do at that time, and that's what we had to work with. And I believed in quality, and so I continually upgraded. I think I went through 7 different formats of video in my career, just to continually trying to get that quality and be able to produce some quality programs. So
right. Do you remember what brand of calls you would carry in your pack?
Oh my God! You know, my favorite problem. Well, it depends on what I was hunting. I mean, I carried a bark for moose. I carried I love Primo's calls. I'm a fanatic on them. So I carried a lot of diaphragms. And the one thing about turkey hunting, since, you know, for 40 years, is I know how to use a diaphragm, and that comes into play a lot when you're out elk hunting or whatever. You know, grunt tubes, of course. I'm not a big, huge advocate of calling all the time. I just believe in being able to call, especially whitetail, when the time comes, but not to call all the time, like you would be calling elk or like you'd be calling moose. I use calls very, very sparingly, I guess, with whitetail.
In your opinion, when you talk about use the call when the time comes, break that down and explain that a little better if you would. Tell us how you would distinguish when to use the call.
Well, it all depends on the time of year and what the deer are actually doing. You know, early season, of course, they're not responsive to calls at all. And I feel that I've learned it over the years in turkey hunting too, that the more calling you do, the more education you're giving those animals. And so like I would, you know, once in a while a fawn bleed if I seen anything distress going on in the woods, but I just wouldn't go out and fawn bleed, or I wouldn't blind grunt. But as I spent, I think, for the last 24 years, I've also been fortunate enough to manage and run some whitetail ranches and do some biology work and deer counts and harvesting and sort of managing the deer herds. And, you know, maybe 3 or 4 times in my life have I heard a buck snort wheeze. And I've seen the situations of when they did it. And so I was, you know, I just won't go and buck snort wheeze right now. And I had a buck actually last year in Kansas, a beautiful 8.160 class, that buck snort wheeze. And I go, oh my God, all I got to do is do it back and he's coming. And I buck snort wheeze and he went the other way. So, you know, it's tough. I mean, turkey and elk and moose, oh my God. I mean, of course you can overcall, but you can call a lot more. But with whitetail, you know, I'm very limited on what I do on calling. And I guess my biggest call is to grunt to make them stop so I can get an arrow in them.
Gotcha.
I would say.
What's your preference on camouflage?
As far as patterns?
Yeah.
That's a tough one. I have a hard time, and I've learned this a lot when I was filming, of, you know, being away from a hunter at 200 yards and zooming in and seeing how they blend into the bush or the certain environment and habitat that they're in. It all depends. I mean, gosh, when I hunted antelope and crawled around for desert mule deer, I loved the brush from mossy oak, or, you know, depending on, you know, the grays and the browns. Somebody will pick a camo and then like a darker, you know, real tree pattern, real tree or tree bark or whatever, and then sit there and stand in front of white or, you know, brown grass. I mean, you stick out like a sore thumb. So I guess it all depends on the habitat. And I have multiple different patterns that I use depending on the time of year and stuff like that.
Yeah, time of year and location. Okay, gotcha. So we got into.
But I've also hunted like the like the Wensels. I mean, I've hunted with just breakup, like a flannel shirt. You know, so I believe in breakup for sure. You know, not a solid pattern, but it just all depends on the situation, I guess.
Yeah, it makes sense though. We got in your backpack and we got into your camouflage a little bit. Any particular pair of hunting boots that sticks in your mind that you prefer to wear?
Oh, my favorite's Kenetrek. Kenetrek by far the best boots that I've ever wore. And I'm talking Kenetrek is, you know, a lot of hiking. That was the biggest issue, carrying heavy pounds on my back, is my feet. that was the one thing that would go probably first more than my legs or shoulders or whatever. And I've tried all kinds of different boots, but the Kenetreks are just incredible how you can throw them on, don't have to break them in. They last a long time. They're expensive, but you pay for what you get, and they're probably my favorite boots. Lacrosse, as far as, for my mucks or getting the swamps and stuff like that, I wear those a lot. But when it comes to hiking and not super, 30 below zero stuff like I used to in Alberta, Kenetrek's by far my favorite boot.
Perfect. Let's talk a little bit about tree stands. You a hang on, a climber, ladder stand, or a ground blind? What's your preference?
Still a tree stand. I here in Michigan, I'm all tree stands and
ladder stands. I'm assuming.
Climbing sticks.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Sticks. Hang-ons. Okay.
Yeah, no, I don't. I have never. God, in the old days, it's terrible. But I used to use climbing spikes used on poles for electrical companies to get up trees. But of course, they stopped that as far as a legal reason. And I just use climbing sticks I've just never been too much in a lot of the trees I hunt in. I'm limited on what I could do with a climber. So I still hike out there and hang on my stands, and I like to be about 25 feet in the air.
You ever get a nosebleed being that high?
No. But then it's so funny when we hunt Kansas, we're in 12-foot ladder stands, and it's sort of my first year there. I was like, oh my God, are you kidding me? And it's amazing that those deer aren't as educated as they are here in the north from a million hunters in Michigan, that they don't look up too much. So I was surprised at first. I was going, oh my God, are you kidding me? I got to hunt this thing. But they're pretty comfortable actually now. So, but I hunt everything. I mean, ground blinds, not in Michigan, but like Kansas and Missouri, if there's certain places, of course, are shortness of trees and different places where the deer are, if they're up in the higher country and just cedar, clumps of cedar and stuff like that. Yeah, I hunt ground blinds. So
let's talk a little bit about you talking about hunting Canada. Tell us what preference on cold weather gear.
That's, for years I used Northern Outfitters. That's when I hunted 7 years in a row in the Ozone in Alberta. And the deer would move the best when it was 20 and 30 below zero. And I mean, it was so cold that the popples it sounded like shotguns going off around you all day long, just snapping from the frost, from freezing. And we had the Northern Outfitters where you were like, I mean, it was big. It's what they used in the Adirondack and stuff like that. I mean, unbelievable. And the boots, you could hardly walk in them. They were so big, but it was a way of staying warm, and I just couldn't wait till it got to be 9 o'clock in the morning to rattle just to warm up a little bit. But a lot has changed since then, all the layering systems. And I personally, all my stuff right now is ScentLok, and I believe in layering. I love the whole carbon aspect of it, but I also believe in layering. And so, yeah, I've thinned down a lot of my clothing for sure. But, Sitka gear is a great gear for like mountain hunting and, again, the layering. But now pretty much all the different camo companies or clothing companies are set up with a layering system, and that's the way you gotta set up. I use a lot of wool or polar fleece in my outer layers, and so it's quiet. I'm a fanatic on noise as well. So
very good. Very good. Jay, you want to get into a memorable hunt?
I do, but before we get into that, Tim, I wanted to talk a little bit about how many places you've actually hunted over your lifetime. Have you ever taken a count?
I haven't. It's sort of like when they wanted me to do the Boone and Crockett show, Greg Tinsley from Osceola contacted me and said, how many big game animals have you filmed? And it's like, I don't really know.
Right.
I've never really, long story short, I had 17. But I never really did a count on that, but I've hunted a lot in Canada, British Columbia, Alaska, Yukon, pretty much all North America. I did harvest a few plains game in Africa when I was there, but that was about it. I was more there for filming. And but yeah, I think I've shot all the deer species with my bow except a big mule deer, which is on my bucket list. But I've taken elk and moose from BC and elk in New Mexico, and I've hunted Montana and Arizona, and did a lot of Coues deer hunting down in Mexico. Another bucket list is I want to get a red stag, so we're heading out next spring, a group of us to Argentina, which I'm excited about.
Nice.
Yeah, try to get some free range and stag. But yeah, I've been lucky. I've been very fortunate in my life, and I guess, people say, well, you're a rich man. And I go, well, probably financially, I'll never be a rich man, but I'm the richest man in the world when I'm in the bush or on top of a mountain. So
that's very true. I feel like I'm extremely wealthy, and it's only because I'm sitting somewhere in the woods of New Hampshire during foliage season. It's just phenomenal.
Absolutely.
So if you had to take a guess, how many different states have you hunted?
Oh, my goodness. God, between turkey and deer and coos and, oh, my God. I would say probably 15, 20. Right now with whitetail, it's pretty much all Missouri, Kansas, and Michigan.
That's intense. That's a lot. That's a lot of ground to cover, and a lot of different styles of hunting to endeavor. I mean, some of them are similar, but you're talking if you're out west, it's different than hunting in the Midwest and to the Northeast. There's all kinds of styles and different terrain that you have to encounter.
Absolutely,
it's just different. What could
I guess I can say my key to success is preparation.
Okay.
I mean, in anything I hunt, if you don't prepare for it, you've lost half the battle.
Right.
So it's all about preparation and understanding where you're going and the terrain and the species you're hunting.
Okay. Is there one thing, a mannerism, that you could describe amongst all deer that you've found intriguing?
Yeah, they're very smart. They're very smart. I've worked with deer. I mean, my God, I've raised them. I've worked with them. I've studied them. There's one thing about a whitetail, you will never figure them out. You can get a good idea of their habits and characteristics, but they're like a human. Each person is different. The best thing with whitetail is catching them when they're stupid. And there's only 5-10 days of the whole year where that happens. And it's just they're very smart, especially the older bucks. And I hunt strictly older deer now. And my trophy isn't, whether it scores 200 or 120, it's a mature buck. Because a mature buck, whether he's got 170 inches of bone on his head or 120, he's as smart as the other buck because he's mature. He's been around. He's, learned a lot of stuff. So, the characteristics of a whitetail is, this time of year, catch them in their, going to and from their feeding, and later on is, change their old patterns and try to catch them out moving around, chasing does and sort of dropping their guard a little bit.
Gotcha. Okay. Good information. Good strategies there, definitely. So of all the places that you've hunted, which is the one that sticks out the most as far as deer hunting? What's the place that we're going to go on our whitetail hunt with you or muley hunt or wherever we're going to hunt a buck? Where's that place we're going to go?
I'm pretty partial right now to the Midwest.
Okay.
It's a whole different style of hunting. I like the fact that, you in New Hampshire, me in Michigan, it's all woodlots. And it's sort of picking trails and, of course, food plots and stuff like that. Out in the Midwest, it's a lot of pinch points. It's a lot of open prairie, and then it drops down into coulees and river bottoms. And that allows you see a lot more action. You see a lot more deer activity because that's what they're traveling. And it's sort of a lot easier to pinpoint a certain pattern of a deer. Here in southern Michigan, for instance, there's a lot of farmland. So when I hunted down there, I spent most of my time on fence lines and hedgerows because that's where you'd see their most, rubs and scrapes. And that was their sort of travel corridor in between feeding and bedding and looking for does. Yep. But I think, Alberta was brutally cold, but the deer up there are tremendous, huge and tough. And, so each one has its own, little unique thing I like about it. But right now, the Midwest is off the chart.
That's got your interest the most. Okay. All right.
Yeah. It's just, it's a way of really having an opportunity to book a hunt for 5 days and be able to be in the action.
Right.
In Missouri, we lease property. So that's a lot nicer because weather permitting, we can take off a week and then go a week later. So that's one thing nice. In Kansas, we hunt with an outfitter.
Okay.
So, yeah. But,
Gotcha.
Alaska, when I took on my Sitka Black to black-tailed deer, that on Admiralty Island, that's just a whole different ball game, but it was intriguing in its own right. So I think everywhere I hunt is pretty awesome.
Gotcha. Is there one that sticks out more than the others as far as the actual hunt? And what I'm referring to is the memorable hunt that I want you to take us on. I want you to take us on a hunt with you, go play by play to a hunt that meant a lot to you. And I want to be there sitting on your shoulder watching this whole thing unfold as we go through the hours or the days or however long it took. Is there one hunt in particular that you can think of?
Wow. Personally, there's just so many. And for me, I think my most memorable whitetail hunt ever is when my younger son had cancer.
Okay.
And I was able to, through a gentleman that ran a whitetail ranch that I worked at, gave him an 8-point hunt. And so I was able to take him out of the hospital, get away from all that, and get him out in the woods. And I think the 15th time we got out there, he finally shot a beautiful 8-point with his bow. And that's probably my favorite whitetail hunt. I mean, nothing to do with me. I mean, I've had so many, my God, hunting with the brown bears in on Admiralty Island with the Sitka was a huge experience, but it's just, that's a really hard call. I've got so many, my first buck is just as important as my biggest buck.
Okay.
So that's a tough one for me. I'd have to really think about it. I also take handicapped kids every year hunting through our Safari Club chapter for the last 15 years, actually. And them are my most memorable hunts as well.
Were you on the hunt with your son?
Yes, sir. I guided him.
Okay. Let's go play by play on that if we could. Talk to us about how it all developed, and then let's slow it down a little bit so people can really get a visual on how this thing unfolded.
Okay. Well, Dick Johnson was the gentleman's name. He owned Wildlife Place in southern Michigan, which was a high fence whitetail ranch. And I was doing some video production as well as biology work. Well, Matt came down with cancer, was in Ann Arbor, Mott, in the hospital through chemo treatment. And Dick just came up to me and said, Tim, I'd love to give Maddie an 8-point hunt, and which I thought was incredible. So I would go down every weekend and be able to take him out of the hospital to the point where I'd give him his IVs and everything and be able to take him up on this hunt. And it was huge for him to be able, for both of us, but it was huge for him to be able to get out of the hospital and to get outdoors and forget about all the issues and the problems. And so, my God, we were in tree stands, and, I filmed the whole thing. It was actually on one of my hunting videos. And, we just never really connected on the right buck. I mean, we had a lot of different bucks go by us, but we were looking for a particular buck, which, again, allowed Maddie to be out there that much more. At the same time as he got to learn a lot about whitetail hunting at the young age of 14. And I'll just never forget the night he shot his deer. I think it was the 14th time that we went out there, and it was just an incredible time for both of us.
Did you pick him up at the hospital?
Yeah, I would pick him up, drive him up, and then he would stay in the lodge with us, and we would go out hunting, all, morning and night. And so, long story short, is finally the night. It was pouring rain, and it was real foggy. I remember just constantly cleaning. There's two things I remember that night: is filming him, and now all his eyelashes and his hair is gone. And it was really foggy. I was having a hard time keeping my lens clean, and this beautiful 8-point come in and was quartering like 25 yards, and Matt was, of course, shaking like a leaf. And so I sort of just said, well, don't worry about it. Just let him calm down, and you calm down. And he center punched it, and it was, we both bawled, and it was pretty awesome. It was pretty awesome, and it was huge for him. It was huge for me, and that's probably my favorite.
That must have been. That's a pretty touching moment. I mean, I feel like it's raining, and I can visualize that and how much it must have meant to you, and to him to be able to do this. Despite the odds, that's
exactly
super important. Tell me a little bit about your biggest buck that you ever shot too. I'm kind of curious about that one. You mentioned the biggest buck. What's a big buck to you? Is it antlers or is it weight?
I think my biggest has only been in the 150s that I've taken with the bow.
Okay.
And I pass up everything 140 and down now.
Okay.
But probably the biggest buck was, and it only scored like 128. It was, and again, when I use score, it's a way of me calling my friend in Colorado and going, I just shot a 5-year-old 8-point with a 20-inch spread that scores 120. It's more of a visual.
Mm-hmm.
I've got, I think, 6 or 7 animals in the Boone and Crockett books and never entered them, just because that's not why I do it. But I think probably one of my favorite was, I could tell you the one that I didn't get a shot at. That would probably have been the most awesome. But I think it was the one I shot in Michigan. It was 128, and it was a 5.5-year-old buck on state land that I hunted for 3 years.
All right. Yeah, no, this is interesting. This is a good topic. I want to hear more about this story because, I mean, one of the things we love is public land hunting. Where are we going on this hunt?
Well, I'm in an area that not a lot of people hunt. I mean, it's thick, it's swamp. I hike in 3 miles. It takes me about a little over an hour to get to my stand.
Wow.
But my first thing is I want to be away from hunters. Nothing worse than spending all your time keeping an area, odor-free and scent-free and human-free, and then having somebody walk by your stand opening morning. It's just, I don't like that. So I go beyond the call of duty still to hike out and try to get away from hunters. And this buck, I hunt swamps. I mean, I've sort of learned to hunt, the outskirts of the swamps and understand what the deer are doing in them. And, this buck, I had got pictures of him. I had seen him once before, and then I got pictures of him one time the year before, and I sort of figured out his pattern a little bit. I personally do not put my cameras where I hunt. I think that's a big mistake that a lot of people do.
Okay, why?
Because even the no glows and the blacks, the big bucks still look at them. They can hear the trigger, or they can hear a click, or they can hear something. And when I did databases at our ranch, I ran 20 cameras all the time to figure out what deer are in there, and try to keep it. That's how we did our deer counts in the later years. And every big buck looks at them. And the biggest bucks on state land that I have on camera, I had 5 last year that were, one was about 150 for Michigan. That's a huge buck for northern Michigan. And every one, I got one picture of them. That's it. They would not walk by that camera again. And so I pretty much use my cameras now where I don't hunt, and actually possibly use them as a way of pushing the deer, having them change their pattern to sort of go towards me, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
I want to see the deer in the area. And it's different, you can't feed here in northern Michigan. And so it's different if you're over a food pile or a corn feeder. That's different. But when you've got them just stuck out on a trail system somewhere, I just think you hurt yourself. And so I have cameras. The closest camera to me right now is probably 600-700 yards from where I hunt. But I've got to learn over the years through Google Maps and hiking, and to be able to know the layout of that whole swamp, where the pressure comes from. Late season bow hunting, before the rut, there's a little more pressure from bird hunters and hikers and people walking in the woods, so they dig a little deeper. So I go in deeper, but when it comes time to where they start chasing does and start moving a lot more, then I'll get to the outskirts of like little fingers or ridges off of where I was hunting earlier. So anyway, I was sitting there, it was like 10 o'clock in the morning, and it was super quiet, and all of a sudden I just heard a grunt and turned, and I knew it was him right away. And he came in about 30 yards, and I shot him. So it was pretty awesome. And to be able to go up and hang him on my father's buck pole, that's what we did. I remember my grandfather walking out and laughing and loving to see all the bucks. And so that's what we do here still. And so I just couldn't wait to get that buck back and show my father that there's monster bucks still that live up here in northern Michigan.
Right. Get them on the buck pole and show them.
Absolutely. And so this year, we're fanatics on conservation too.
Okay.
And managing herds. I mean, we're big time fanatics, and the QDMA has worked so well for the awareness of, letting them grow. I mean, you need 3 things to raise a big buck, and it's groceries, and it's age, and it's genetics. And if you have, everywhere's got some groceries, but if you have age, to me, that I don't care what he scores, that buck is smart, and he's been probably shot at a ton of times and spooked by how many hunters. And to me, that's the ultimate of shooting a deer is here in state land of Michigan. I mean, I think it's the hardest. I really do.
Right. No, it makes sense.
And, you know, and the nice thing where I hunt is so far out that the few people that hunt there later on, they don't shoot smaller bucks because they don't want to drag them out.
Right.
And so it's sort of a nice little management tool we have on state land. So it's I just love trying to figure out deer, and my first thing is get away from hunters.
That's your thing. Okay.
That's the thing. I do not want to see another hunter when I'm hunting. No.
All right. And it's an interesting topic. You touched on it. So your big thing is to get away from hunters. So what are you looking for? Like when you're going to Google Maps, what is it that you're trying to key on? And you mentioned you're looking at activity levels and things like that. How do you decide? Mm-hmm. How do you make these decisions?
Well, you can you know where there's oak ridges, so you know that's a food source. Mm-hmm. You can see pinch points. You can see the whole property the way it's laid out. You know, there's just so many different things to look into. I mean, and then I do a lot of spring scouting. You know, I go out in the spring where I can see all the scrapes and all the rubs, and where the deer movement was, but I don't do much in the fall. I go out and I set my cameras up when I get out of there.
Okay.
And then my stand is set where I'm going to hunt this year. I already know where I'm going to hunt this year, and I leave it alone, you know, and I think that's my best chance of shooting a mature buck but yeah, that's what I just look at the terrain. I sort of take it from, if you were to look out in the Midwest and you see all these big fields and you look at Google, well, it's very easy to see where the pinch points are and where the funnels are.
Okay.
So I just sort of change that whole terrain around and incorporate it into the swamp I'm hunting here and say, okay, you know, if there's 4 foot of water, the deer aren't going to travel through that 4 foot of water every day. So They're going to skirt the edges. So you can, and that's how I sort of set up. I love hunting over scrapes and by scrapes. Not as much rubs. Rubs just show you where the bucks are. But scrapes is one day they're going to be back to that scrape.
Okay.
And so if you can hold out long enough, that's a whole ticket, I think.
What else do you look for pinch points when you're studying a Google map, for example?
Creek bottoms, you know, low elevation drops of 10 feet, 15 feet, edges of, you know, oak ridges and food sources. Where I hunt, there's no fields. There's no food plots or nothing. So it's, you know, now if this year our acorns are sort of scarce, I mean, it's crazy. We've had acorn drop in 3 years, which I don't remember ever having that happen. But this year it's spotty. So there's some trees that have a lot of acorns and some that don't. So right away, I'm going to, of course, be moving towards that area where there's acorns, and then find that pinch point coming in. I don't hunt on top of ridges at all. I hunt a buck. The majority of bucks will not follow a runway all the time here in Michigan. And so where there's heavy runways, I'll always sit 30 or 40 yards away from them.
Okay.
Because that's usually the buck likes to stick in the thicker cover.
The does will follow the runways, and they like to kind of meander and trail in the thickest stuff around the trail, but not on the trail.
Yeah. And the younger bucks will as well.
Right.
So if somebody wants to go out and harvest a buck, you know, I would suggest sitting over, and don't care about the age. I mean, nothing wrong with sitting over runways, but you don't see too many big bucks unless he's following a doe, ever follow a runway. Not that I can, not to say they don't, but majority of the time they don't.
Right. Generally speaking, they kind of create their own trails, and they're subtle.
Correct. They're more elusive. You know, they're more. They understand cover, and that's their safety.
Right.
And
find the thickest,
whitetail's a creature of habit.
Right. Find the thickest, most gnarly brush that you can find, and that's probably where you'll find that buck.
On the edge of it. I mean, you want to be able to have a spot where you don't have to put 10 lanes in there and change the whole habitat. You want to be in an area where at least you can get a 30, 40-yard shot with your bow.
Right.
You know, that type of thing. So
very good. All right, let's change the topic of conversation here and talk a little bit about your latest adventure, along with ScentLok and the ScentLok Enforcer. What's going on there?
Okay.
What kind of things can we expect there? What are we doing here?
Well, I guess just a real quick background. For the last 5 years, I sort of got involved after I got out of the video production. I wanted to sort of work. I wanted to stay in the hunting world, but I wanted to sort of go, instead of begging for money for sponsors, I thought I would like to maybe do retail, and came across a gentleman that had this Ozone laundry system. marketing in the appliance world. And I just thought the first thing that went off was odor control. And so I started working with that ScentLok activator laundry system, which is probably one of my favorite units. I love the fact that I'm not using detergent, that my clothes are about as virtually odor-free as possible when I start hunting. And so I really started researching a lot on ozone, getting back to preparation, I guess. And I have, tested and scientifically tested for the last 5 years. So we started using a smaller unit called the ScentLok Activator on the Go, which is more made for like a car, real low output of ozone.
Okay.
And use that for our totes. And I think I shared this with you earlier, and, with all the hunting I do and working with whitetail, in 5 years in a row, I have not been blown at in a tree stand, which has made my hunts that just incredible. Not to say that a buck, I've had like 2 or 3 bucks where they'll come in and they get downwind of me and they sort of get a little nervous, but they don't get enough whiff of me to blow out of there. And 2 years ago, the first buck did it, and he laughed, just sort of snuck out, and I shot the 5th buck. If he would have blown, I would have never seen probably another deer that night. So I really got involved with the ozone and really believing in it. I did some of the most craziest testing myself with it, and it's just an incredible odor removing product. And so then about a year and a half ago, I decided that I really want to create something as an ozone generator that's a lot more versatile, but something that is still safe to use in a ton of different applications. So we are manufacturing a product called ScentLok Enforcer, which is a portable ozone generator emitting 20 milligrams in ozone, which is a pretty low amount of ozone. We marketed it because the hunting world and the hockey world understand that ozone works. And so my whole goal was to come up with a product that people can use over numerous applications to prepare themselves for their hunt or to rid their bacteria and deadly viruses from their hockey gear and odors to, fish coolers and live wells of boats and cuddies of boats, just a unit that is portable, versatile, and affordable. And so I think we came out with a winner. It's a pretty awesome product right now that we're marketing that's going over really well.
I can see the applications. I can see them helping out the daily hunter. And when I say daily, I mean daily, like the person that gets out in the field every day, that hunts every evening or every morning. Putting your clothes back into some container with an ozone generator that's not going to put too much out there that is not safe, but it's safe enough to store in totes and basically clean your clothes of all the things that you want to get rid of without actually having to spend an hour doing laundry. And so I think that's a super important gear. It's a super important item that you can have in your gear that will probably make the difference between getting close and not getting a shot.
Yeah. I mean, I firmly believe in, like I've talked about in the past, preparation or earlier. And, we use this product faithfully. We'll put in our vehicles to kill the odor, and our vehicles, guides are using in their guides, or the outfitters are using in their guides or put in their vehicles, so it's ready for the hunters the next morning. We get back from our hunt. I've got an hour and a 3-hour timer on it. Our 3 hours actually wiping out a whole hockey bag. So usually, unless you have got some nasty odors from whatever out hunting, we come in, we throw it in our tote, you throw it in for 1 hour application, and you're ready to go the next morning. And it's just an incredible tool. You could use it on your boots. We use it on our boat. People don't realize how much odor you carry off your boats and your quivers and stuff, because nobody ever really washes them, or you might spray them down. And not to say sprays aren't bad at all. They're actually really good. But I don't think I've ever seen anybody spray themselves down and cover every inch of their body. And by doing this with ozone, you're actually, we got scientific testing up to 99.8% of bacterias and odors that it actually removes. So I firmly believe in starting my hunt, trying to kill the odor at the source, not trying to cover up or block your odor while you're hunting, but rather get rid of all your odor before you go hunting.
Right.
And And it's just the biggest thing it's did, I think, for me, of course, seeing a lot more deer, but it's also gave me confidence. And it's sort of like going and shoot. If you don't shoot your bow and practice at 60 yards and you got a monster, whitetail at 40 yards in Kansas standing there, you're going to be really nervous and unsure of your shot. And it's sort of like in the old days when a buck would come down, and we'd cover up, we'd put it in cedar or hang them outside, but you're still not getting rid of all those odors or the food in your clothing that bacteria and odors attached to. And, I have confidence now when a buck's coming in before I go, oh my God, I got to take a shot before he hits my wind, to where now I just let him walk right in. It's awesome. So it's really given me confidence. And by using, I use the washing machine. I don't wash my clothes all the time, but I wash them enough to get them clean, and there's no detergent in them, and they're going to stay as odor free as long as possible. And then being able to come in every night and get rid of the odor, off your clothing, then it's awesome. And it's proven big time. I think 9 of us last year, my pro staff, we shot over 1,500 inches of bone of deer, just all mature big bucks. Nobody ever got busted. It was pretty awesome. So
wow.
It's a tool that you can use 365 days a year, and that's what we wanted to create.
Yeah, and you've been in the field enough over the years to understand what it was like before this product and what it's like after. And are you seeing a contrast?
Oh, absolutely. I've seen a huge change since I started using Ozone, a big change.
Okay.
And it's I love the fact it's chemical free, it's organic, and it actually is one of the number one deodorizers in the world. I mean, we've used Ozone for 50 years in grocery stores, over meat counters, to, water treatment plants, to bottled water, to fighting cancer, to, fighting Lyme's disease. I mean, there's just so many things that are learning about Ozone, used properly.
Right.
And so that's what we're trying to do, is take a small amount of Ozone and be able to do all the work you need it to do for what your applications are.
Right.
And being odor free is by far, to me, one of the best preparations you can do, because if a big buck busts you, you're not going to see him again. And so it just gives that opportunity to be able to harvest those larger bucks, and it's pretty awesome. So
I also like that it's portable and that you can put it in your vehicle and you can go on your deer trips wherever you're going, and basically keep it going with a generator, right? Like you can just plug it into an outlet in your vehicle and throw it in your tote.
Well, yeah, what it does have, we have a 1 hour and 3 hour setting on it. And then, and the reason we did that is it has an 8 hour lithium battery in it. It lasts up to 8 hours.
Okay.
And we wanted to do that because the more you drain a lithium battery, you have a lot less shelf life for it. It also, so it's portable. It weighs less than a pound. It's got a fan on it, so it emits ozone with the fan. It's all USB. So it comes with a USB wall plug as well as a USB cord. So you can plug it into your car USB, or if you don't, you can get a cigarette lighter with a USB plug. It'll run while you're using it, and then when the timer goes off, it'll actually charge it to full capacity. It takes about 4 hours to charge it. But yeah, it's portable. You can, if you go on a hunt, for instance, out west, and you're elk hunting and you have no access to power or whatever, you could actually charge this up and use it 1 hour a day in your clothes at night and last for an eight-day hunt.
Wow.
We also, for safety reasons, incorporated, which is sort of unique, is we have a power bank in it. So you can actually charge your iPhone and your tablets off it.
Really?
So if a lot of times you're sitting out there nowadays, I mean, my gosh, my phone's buzzing with texts from all our hunting buddies and how they're doing and sending pictures.
Right.
And it doesn't take long to drain a battery. So it's always nice to come back and be able to plug it in and charge your phone up right away, or for emergency reasons as well. So we have sort of a unit that it not only does multiple uses on a ton of different applications, but it also serves as a power bank too for charging.
It's fantastic. It sounds like you put some ingenuity into this, and nice to see somebody doing a smart device as opposed to just throwing something together and putting it on the market. Looks like you've actually put some thought into it.
We put a lot of time into this product.
Very nice.
I just like the multi-use for it. That's what blows me away.
Right. Yeah. I like any device that has more than one use. That's
exactly
brilliant.
that you can use 365 days a year. You know, it's not like one application. You know, I mean, guys, I got people now that are dog, you know, like especially guys duck hunting, they love it because, you know, your dogs are soaking wet, they stink, they jump in your car or in the back of your truck. And I'm getting a ton of people just going, oh my God, this thing is crazy. You know, it's wiping out all the dog odor. I mean, there's just so many different applications. I mean, I've taken, people just bought it. They're going on an elk hunt. They just bought a couple of them. And I've never even thought of this, but because it does kill bacteria, reduces bacteria, that they've got a freezer in their truck and they're going elk hunting, but in case their truck breaks down or they can't have an opportunity to plug their freezer in somewhere, they're going to be putting this in their freezer just to kill the bacteria so their meat lasts longer.
Right.
Which is sort of I was sort of surprised when they said that, but it makes all the sense in the world.
It does make sense.
We've actually taken freezers. An outfitter friend of mine had a whole freezer, lost his power of elk meat, and he was ready to throw it out, and he put the unit in there for 3 hours, and he's still using it. So there's just so many different things you can use it on that it's pretty nice.
Right.
Yeah.
And not to compare it to cellophane wrapped grocery store meat, but when you go into a grocery store and it's all, you have those containers and the meat is red, it's being preserved because it has a gas in it, and it actually does two things. It keeps the meat red, and it kills bacteria so it doesn't go bad. And it's effectively the same kind of idea here, but in this case it's with ozone and not with like CO2, for example.
Right. And the gentleman actually owns grocery stores, and he told me that for 40 years he's been using ozone and pumping it over his meat, you know, where he does all his butchering and his meat counters to keep the smell down.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's where he came up with this concept. But, you know, it's just, there's so many, as I've worked with ozone, and, you know, there's just so many different applications it's used on today, that it's incredible. It's a cool, ozone is, I mean, we breathe it every day.
Right.
You know, I mean, that's what keeps our earth clean, and we're doing nothing more than taking oxygen, creating ozone, and it reverts back to oxygen. So
right. And in fact, it's
no chemicals involved.
Starting to rain outside my studio now. There's an ozone generator right there, and it's
that's exactly right.
It's cleaning.
That's exactly right.
So,
or, you know, this is funny. When I was a brown bear filming in British Columbia, I was filming this weir with all the salmon. And if you were right under because waterfalls also creates oxidation, which also keeps the meat and everything lasting longer. All the fish that were dead underneath the waterfalls, the bear would pull them up and they're like stiff and solid. And 100 yards down the river, the bear was diving and picking up these dead ones, and they were just falling apart in their mouth. So that right there is an experience I've seen outdoors where oxidation definitely, you know, kills bacteria and keeps the meat and stuff fresh longer. Right.
It's a fascinating concept. Well, I'm glad you're involved in that, and I think your career and your evolution of, you know, from the taxidermy to, or even going back further, your tradition of your family and the hunting community, to your taxidermy shop, to your filming career and hunting all over the world and filming all over the world, wildlife, and learning from them, and then stepping into this world of ozone where you wouldn't necessarily think that, if you're just looking in from the outside, well, you wouldn't necessarily think that ozone would play a part, but it does. And I'm glad you're getting into that, because I think there's some big applications here for all hunters to make their hunts more successful and enjoyable, quite frankly.
I appreciate that.
So I have 10 rapid fire questions for you, Tim. I didn't prep you for these, and I didn't want to, because I think they're better off the cuff.
You didn't prep me for much, to be honest with you, but that's okay.
All right. Well, let's give it a shot. All right. What's your number one hunting tip of all time?
Be prepared. Preparation.
Okay. We all have these things that we need to hunt with. It's usually some kind, maybe it's a good luck charm, but it's something. It's something that drives us nuts if we leave it in the truck, and it's all we think about if we don't have it in our hands or in our pack. What's that one thing for you?
My bow. I really don't have a lucky charm.
No lucky charm. That's probably smart. What is your biggest pet peeve?
A hunter walking in front of me in my tree stand.
When you put all that hard work into making sure there wasn't another hunter around, that would tick me off too.
That's right.
All right. How old are you today, Tim?
I am 62.
All right. 62. What would you tell the 30-year-old Tim Gauthier, knowing what you know today?
I wouldn't change a thing, I don't think.
Okay.
Just to keep doing what you love to do. That's pretty important. I come home every night feeling good about myself. I used to work in a factory for 4 or 5 years, and I just couldn't handle it. I had to be outdoors, and I had to be out in the woods and in the wild, and I just continue going after your dream and believing in hunting and don't stop believing in conservation. We've had incredible, working with Boone and Crockett and the TV shows, we've had an incredible sort of wave of conservation, and I feel it's a huge part of all of this. These animals wouldn't be here if it wasn't for us hunters and conservation. And I'm a true believer in that. We're the ambassadors of the wildlife. And it's hard for people to understand that we can go kill something, but at the same time save something. And I've did it numerous times. So I would just say chase your dream, and don't let anybody change your mind and tell you you're doing something wrong. You're doing something you believe in, and it's healthy.
Right. Gotcha. All right. You meet a stranger in the hotel lobby of a hunting convention. They ask you what you do for a living. What do you tell them?
I'm a hunter.
That's a great answer.
I'm a hunter. And just to really recap on this real quick, when I first started, there was women. I mean, there was nobody in my school that liked me because I was a hunter. And I used to fly on the planes all the time and talk with people and tell them I'm a hunter. And I would sit there for an hour having a discussion of trying to defend myself.
Right.
And then I got to the point where I started doing a lot of documentary. Well, it was a whole different ballgame. Then it was fine that I was chasing animals and harassing them with my camera, I guess. But then I turned around, and if I said I was a hunter, then they wouldn't want to talk. So the one really quick thing I got to share with you, it was a couple of years ago, and I was sitting with a very attractive woman, and she was sort of flirtatious, I guess, a little bit, but talking about animals, and I was actually going out to do some filming, and she was thinking that was so great. And then I said, and she goes, so are you a hunter? And I said, absolutely. Well, are you going to shoot them? And I says, well, once we're done filming, yeah, I'm sure I'm going to try to hunt. I've got a tag.
Right.
And she just sort of looked at me, and I turned right around and I said, you mean you're not a hunter? Are you kidding me? You're not a hunter? And it just sort of, she took it by surprise. I finally, after all these years, turned around and said, you know what? I'm not going to keep making excuses. You're the one that's not a hunter. You're the one that's wrong.
Right.
And so that was sort of cool.
That is cool. What'd you have for breakfast this morning?
Egg and sausage biscuit that I didn't make. I bought it at a store because I was too busy.
That's all right. Those are yummy. Okay, you can have your own billboard on the side of a highway. It's a blank canvas. What would you put on it?
Oh, my God. Nothing to do with my product. I would put hunters are conservationists. Support your local hunter.
I love it. If I say the word successful to you, who's the first person that pops into your head and why?
My son, because now he's 39 years old with 2 kids, has beat cancer twice, and has a very successful landscape company in Maine. So I would say he's very successful.
That's awesome. I will not argue with that. That is fantastic. All right. What's a day in the life of Tim Gauthier look like?
Today?
A
lot of graphic design, a lot of computer work, chance to hike out and check my cameras, and ready to head to a store first thing, 6 o'clock in the morning, to do some help on marketing the product here in Michigan.
Gotcha. All right. And then finally, what's a deer hunting day in the life of Tim Gauthier typically look like?
24 hours. It's going to bed early, getting up early, and spending the whole day in the woods and getting back late at night.
Gotcha. Endless pursuit.
It is.
Awesome, Tim. Well, those are the 10 questions. Did a great job. And you know what, Tim? Thank you for joining us on the Big Buck Deer Hunting Podcast. It was a pleasure listening to you. I'd like to talk to you more. I think you got a lot more knowledge in your head, and I'm going to try to extract that some more down the road, if that's all right. Because
no worries.
We spent over an hour just talking, but I think there's more to this whole endeavor, and there's more stories that I can get out of you. So I want to do this again somewhere down the road. But,
well, I hope I can share them with you.
I'm sure you can. But thanks again for joining us. It's been a fantastic journey.
Okay, Dusty and Jay, thank you so much.
50 years of hunting experience. You can't go wrong. That's what Tim Gauthier just brought to the table.
It's amazing.
Yeah. There's a lot in there. I hope to have 50 years of hunting experience behind me someday, and I'm getting there. I'm definitely getting there, and I'm learning more every day as I go. But I thought that was pretty entertaining, and the guy just knows a lot, and I'm glad we were able to talk to him for an hour and just pick his brain about all those little things. I mean, it's the little things that make the difference, really, when you think about it. And everybody knows that you can hunt. But what do you do when you get there? What are those little things that makes Tim more successful? I mean, the whole thing about hunting the fingers of the swamps, like you would hunt a pinch point on a giant cornfield. He's doing that in swamps. That's a tip right there. So just great information. Really, really enjoyed that.
Yeah, full of tips, Jay. It's just amazing what 50 years can educate you about hunting whitetails.
Yes, very much so. I learned a lot from Tim, and I'm not done with Tim yet. Let's put it that way. I'm gonna get him back, and I'm gonna get some more out of him because I think he's got a lot more to share.
Oh, for sure, Jay, for sure, no doubt about it.
And that's what we do here on the Big Buck Registry Deer Hunting Podcast. We extract information from world-class deer hunters and dissect them piece by piece, learn what they do so that you can do it too. Well, Dusty, that's a tough act to follow. It was filled with all kinds of tips. But do we have a Chubby Tines tip of the week?
Yeah, we do, Jay.
The Chubby Tines tip of the week is sponsored by Morse's Sporting Goods. Firearms, used firearms, bows, used bows, located at 85 Kentucky Falls Road in Hillsborough, New Hampshire. Give Jim a call at 603-464-3444, morsessportinggoods.com. Your dollars go further in New Hampshire. There's no sales tax. Morse's Sporting Goods.
Deer come out of velvet. It's that time of year that the velvet's coming off, and a deer that comes out of velvet changes their way of life once the hard antler sets in. Your visibility on your deer, especially mature bucks, it decreases by, I'm going to say, a 60% margin. They become more alert to what's going on. Their feeding pattern's going to change. There's a whole lot going on in a deer's life when they go from velvet to hard antler. That's something that is often overlooked, and it's one of them things where they can almost play a mental game on you if you're not accustomed to the velvet to hard antler deer change. It'll throw a loop in your whole program. If you got a deer you're seeing daylight hours pretty frequently in velvet, and now all of a sudden he's nocturnal, he's not visiting the same open field that you've been glassing from the road and seeing him at, it just changes your whole mentality on how to survive now. It's almost like the survival mode kicks in when them hard antlers come on. It's so weird, and it's such a unique thing, and it's a challenge for a hunter, and it's just a whole different ball game once the hard antler sets in. Now, I'm not saying that deer can't be hunted and killed. Don't get me wrong. But that deer is going to change his ways a little bit, and he's going to move in a different pattern, and he may not feed at the times that he's been feeding. When a deer is in velvet, they're feeding to not only put nutrition in the body, but the excess nutrition goes into their antler. And any deer is kind of like a bodybuilder. They want to put enough nutrition in to make the antler grow more and better every year. And it's like they figure that out. If a deer could talk, he'd tell you, I eat this, this, and this to make my antlers grow because I know it's excess nutrition. Once I pump so much into my system, the excess nutrition goes to my antler. So at that point in time, throughout their velvet, they're feeding themselves, trying to, not necessarily stay healthy and alive, but they're trying to grow the antlers, just like anything else that's young and it grows bone. They got to eat, and that's what they're doing. And now that the hard antler set in, that excess nutrition is no longer needed. So now it's just back it down a little bit, keep yourself full, and eat when they need to, and that's it. So just keep that in mind.
Great tip, man. The velvet shed.
Crazy time of year for a whitetail hunter to experience what's going on in the woods. It's unique, but yet it's a challenge. And once you figure it out, you'll get back on a pattern for a little while here till the rut kicks in, and you can get back on that deer. You just got to figure out what he's doing different now.
Yeah, I've been busted by some velvet bucks before in New Hampshire, and boy, I wish I had a shot. It was years ago, but love those velvet bucks. It's on my hit list. A nice velvet buck would be cool. Early season. Well, thanks to USA Trail Cams for sponsoring the Big Buck Registry Deer Hunting Podcast as our title sponsor. Thanks to our new sponsor, ScentLok Enforcer, and thanks to Tim Gauthier for joining us on the podcast, and thanks to Morse's Sporting Goods for sponsoring the Chubby Tines Tip of the Week. Dusty, where can we find you when you're not hanging out here with me in the studio?
Recently got on Twitter, Jay, at Chasing Antler on Twitter, at Chasing Antler on Instagram. You can shoot me an email, dusty@bigbuckregistry.com, or look me up on Facebook, facebook.com/Chubby Tines Outdoors. Jay, where can people reach out to you when you're not on the mic?
The best place is to email me, jay@bigbuckregistry.com. And if you'd like to participate in the Big Buck Registry and all the fun things we have going on, I would go check out our Facebook page, and you can be introduced to about 240,000 plus hardcore deer hunting fans. And if you shot a big buck recently or in the past, doesn't matter, you can go to bigbuckregistry.com/mybuck, and all the instructions will be right there. And we don't post every picture, but if you follow the instructions, and the instructions are pretty simple, if you send us a picture of a good deer and you're in the picture and the buck's in the picture and it's a clear picture, pretty much guaranteed you're going to get on the page, and you can be famous for a day in front of that many fans. You can also follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/bigbuckregistry, instagram.com/bigbuckregistry. You can find us on multiple stations. You can find us on iTunes. You can find us on iHeartRadio. You can find us on Stitcher. You can find us on Google Play. Those are the big four. All you have to do to go to any of them, type in Big Buck Registry. We'll come up immediately. And you can just download all of our catalog, all 166 different episodes of all kinds of varieties of interviews and deer hunting techniques and tips and tricks. You would not believe what's there. If you are an iTunes user, please leave us a review. If you love the show, leave us a 5-star review, and please subscribe to the show. I think that's about it, Dusty.
It's a whole lot of big buck, Jay.
Big buck, everywhere a big buck. I'm Jay Scott.
I'm Dusty Phillips.
And this is the Big Buck Registry Deer Hunting Podcast. We'll see you next week.
Can't wait.